Now we're going to lead you through the great Rashi rundown, some of the major important Rashi in this week's Parsha, and we start at the very beginning of the Parsha, where Hashem says, the pasuk says, "Ve'eschala goy gadol, v'avarecha v'agadlach shemecha." I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make you great. V'heyeh bracha, and you will be a blessing. What does that mean that you will be a blessing? So says Rashi, "V'heyeh bracha." What does that mean? Ha-brachos nesunos biyadcha. The brachos will be given over into your hands. Ad achshav hayu biyadi. Hashem says, until now, brachos, the power to give brachos, were in my hands. Barachti es Adam ve'es Noach v'oscha. I blessed Adam, I blessed Noach, and I blessed you. Umei achshav ata tevarech es asher tachbot. But from this point forward, you, Avram, will get to bless whoever you want to. And that's what it means by Vayeh bracha. You will be the source of bracha. You will be the one to distribute brachas to others throughout. The second Rashi I want to focus on is very soon after that. The pasuk says, "Vayikach Avram es Sarai yishto ve'es Lot and achiv ve'es Korach u'sham asher rachashu es hanevesh asher asu b'charan." That Avram, when he left his homeland, he took Sarai, his wife, he took Lot, his nephew, and he took all the possessions that they got, and he took the nefesh asher asu b'charan. He took the soul of the ones that they made in Haran. What does that mean? It's the souls that he made in Haran. So Rashi says, asher asu b'charan, shehechnisam tachas kanfei hashchina, that he brought these souls under the heavenly spirit, meaning he brought them to believe in God. Avram megayer es hanashim, v'sar megayer es hanashim. The pasuk says that the Rashi says, that Avram converted the men and Sarai converted the women. And the Torah considers it as if they made them, meaning a person who's able to give spirituality, give meaning to a person's life, like Avram and Sarah were able to give meaning to the lives of these people that they were converting. It's as if they made these people into real people. And a powerful idea about that, when you're able to influence someone spiritually, you're giving them their essence, their sustenance, as if you made them. Continuing on in the Parsha, after Avram had left his homeland, so he faced a famine. The pasuk says, "Vayhi rav ba'aretz." There was a famine in the land that Avram was in. Vayired Avram Mitzrayma. The pasuk says that he went down to Mitzrayim, lagur sham, to live there. Ki kaved hara'av ba'aretz, because the famine was very great in the land. And what does that mean, that the famine was very great in the land? Rashi says, "Ra'av ba'aretz, ba'osa ha'aretz levada." Rashi says only in that land was the famine. Lin so to test him. If he was going to question the words of Hashem, who told him to go to Eretz Canaan, and now he was giving advice to leave it. Meaning, Hashem had just told him, leave your homeland, I'm going to give you to this great land, this land of Canaan. And Avram gets this great land of Canaan, and what happens? Right when he gets this great land of Canaan, there's a famine only in Canaan. And it's very easy for Avram to have been saying, this is ridiculous. God told me to go to this great land. Immediately I get it, there's a famine. And Rashi says that Hashem was testing him. This is one of his 10 tests to see, would he trust God? Would he follow God? Would he say, this is ridiculous, I'm going to go on my own path? And that's what the pasuk is teaching us here, that there was this famine only in the land of Canaan and nowhere else. We're going to move ahead to Parak Yadalid, pasuk Yadalid. The pasuk there says, "Vayishma Avram ki nishba achiv," and Avram heard that his brother was taken captive. He heard that Lot was taken captive after the war of the 4 kings and the 5 kings. Vayarkas chanichav yilidei beso, and the pasuk says he armed his initiates who had been born in his house. Vayarkas chanichav, the language that he armed his initiatives. So Rashi picks up on this language of chanichav, and Rashi says shechinech osan lemitzvos, that he prepared them for mitzvos, and Rashi says that chanicho ksiv. It really says chanicho, which is a singular language, and not chanichav, which would be plural. Why? Because zeh Eliezer shechinchu lemitzvos. Because it's really a reference to Eliezer alone, who he initiated in mitzvos. Meaning that the real chanichav here is one person. Avram didn't bring an army of people. He really only brought one person, Eliezer. But the continuation of Rashi is also beautiful. Hu lashon haschalas knisa adam o kliumna shu asad lamod bo. The language of chinuch, that language is the beginning of entering a person or a tool that he's going to use in the future. Meaning the language of chinuch, the idea of chinuch, is to begin the process for someone. That to be mechanech someone is that you begin their process, and that's the word chinuch means. So we see 2 important ideas here. Number 1 is that the pasuk is really referring to not a lot of people, but just one person, Eliezer, who his servant, who Avram educated in mitzvahs. Number 2, the language of chinuch is to start a person on a path. Moving forward a little bit, the pasuk says in Perek Yud Tes Vav, pasuk Hey, the pasuk says, "Vayotze oso hachutza," that Hashem told Avram after he had no children to go outside. Vayomer habetna hashamayim. I want you to look at the sky, usipor kol and count the stars. Tucha lispor, some of you would count them. Vayomer lo kol yezarecha. So too will be your children. Right? I want you to go outside and count the stars. Now the question is, why did he have to go outside? Why is it vayotze aso achutza? So Rashi says vayotze aso achutza lefi pshuto. According to the simple translation, says Rashi, Yotziu me ohalo lachutz l'rosak kochavim. He told him, leave your tent. Literally, you have to go outside to see the stars. If you're in your tent, you have a roof. You got to go outside. But then Rashi says, lefi midrasho, according to the medrash, according to the expounding of the medrash, Amar lo tzei mi'atz nagnina shelcha. I want you to go from your astrology. Because you saw in your astrology that you're not going to have a child. But says Rashi, Avram ein lo ben, Avraham yesh lo ben. You're right, Avram, your name right now will not have a son. Avraham, when I add the hey, he will have a son. V'chein Sarai lo teled. So to Sarai, she won't give birth. Aval Sarah tered, but Sarah will teled. Will give birth. Ani kore lachem shem achar v'yishtana hamazel. Says Rashi, I'm going to call them a different name and I will change their mazel, which is a very interesting idea that Rashi is sharing here, which is that a person has a mazel, has a certain astrology that he is born with. There's this concept that there's a mazel that you're born with, but that can change. Here it's changing by the name change. However, it could always possibly change in other names, other ways as well. Rashi is saying that's meant by Yotzio, so that he was telling Avram, go out from what you understand. You think you know everything because you think that based on what you understand, you can't have children, but I will make sure that your mazel will change and you will have children. Just a few psukim later in Perek Tes Vav, pasuk Yud Gimel, Hashem Vayomer LaAvraham, Hashem says to Avram, Yado Teda Ki Ger Yezarecha Be'eretz Lo Lahem. I want you to know that your children will be strangers in a land that's not theirs. V'avdum v'anu asam, and they will be worked and they will be afflicted. Arba me'el shana, they will happen for 400 years. And Rashi there says ki ger yezarecha. What does it mean that your children will be strangers for 400 years? Mishenolad Yitzchak Achiyatzi Yisrael Mitzrayim Dal me'el shana. Rashi clarifies they're not going to be slaves for 400 years. The idea is that when Mishenolad Yitzchak, once Yitzchak is born, until the Bnei Yisrael leave Mitzrayim, that's 400 years. Meaning it's not 400 years of slavery, but it's 400 years from the beginning. Ketzad, and Rashi does the calculation for you. How is this? So Yitzchak ben Shishim Shana Kishnolad Yaakov. Yitzchak is going to be 60 years when Yaakov is born. Yaakov Kishir Mitzrayim Amar Yemesh Nemigrai Shaloshim Ashana. And Yaakov says that when I go down to Mitzrayim, he was 130 years old. Hari Kuftadi. Doing the math, that is 190 years. Mitzrayim hayumatayim ve'eser, and in Communion Reish Daled Vav Hari Tuf Shana. And in Mitzrayim, they were there for 210 years. So if you do the math, 210 plus 190 is 400 years. And asks Rashi, V'im Tomer Mitzrayim hayudaled me'yoshana. And if you're going to try and suggest that it really was 400 years of Mitzrayim, Hari Kahas Miyor de Mitzrayim Hara. But we know that Kahas was one of the people who went down, one of the 70 souls that went to the Mitzrayim. If you count the years of Kahas, the years of Amram, and the 80 years of Moshe, that he was 80 years old when they left Mitzrayim, you're only going to find 350 years out of all those years. You would have to still subtract the years that was overlap between Kahas and Amram and Moshe. He says it can't be. So what you see from this Rashi is that when he says that you're going to be strangers in the land for 400 years, that means from the moment that Yitzchak is born, they were already strangers in the land. They weren't in their own homeland until they left Mitzrayim. That was 400 years. There was 190 years before they went to Mitzrayim. 210 years in Mitzrayim, 190 plus 210 equals 400. The last Rashi that we're going to do together is at the very end of the Parsha. The very end of the Parsha, as we said in our Parsha rundown, talks about the bris milah that Avram received when he was 99 years old. And the pasuk there says, Perek Yudzayin Pasacha Gimel Vayikach Avraham es Yishmael Beno, that he took his son Yishmael, Koili de Beso, all the people in his house, but called Miknas Kasba, any people that he had acquired, Kol Zachar Ba'anshe Beis Avram, any male that was in the house of Avram, Vayamla es Basar Lasam, and he circumcised their foreskin, Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, in the midst of that day, Kasher Dibra Elokim, like God had told him to do. And Rashi is bothered. What's this language? Be'etzem hayom hazeh. It was in the middle of that day. So Rashi says be'etzem hayom bo bayom shenitztava. First, he says on that day that he was commanded bayom v'lo balayla. He was in the middle of the day, not at night. V'lo nisyari lo min hagayim v'lo min haleitzanim. He wasn't nervous about the non-Jews or the people who were going to mock him. V'shelo ye'oivav. That his enemies or the people of his generation shouldn't say that had we seen him do this, had we seen him doing this crazy thing of bris milah, we would never have let him do it. We would never let him fulfill the mitzvah of Hashem to get a bris milah. So Rashi is saying that Avram did it be'etzem hayom hazeh. Avram did the bris milah in the middle of the day to show that he doesn't care if anyone's going to mock him, he doesn't care if anyone's going to talk about him. He was going to do the mitzvah of Hashem, and you're not going to stop him. And don't say, oh, you tried to sneak behind me, you tried to do when I wasn't really paying attention. That wasn't the way that Avram did it. Avram wasn't embarrassed of the mitzvah of Hashem. He wasn't afraid of people mocking him or his enemies. He said, I'm going to do it in the middle of the day when all of you can see me, and you will know that I did it for the right reasons, and that I did it to fulfill the mitzvah of Hashem, and you can never stop me from doing that. Thank you for joining us for the Parsha of Lech Lecha. It's been a pleasure learning with you, and have a great Shabbos.